Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Cantlow, and I'm the counsel to the Borough President. I'm also joined with Ina Gusenfeld, who is the Land Use Coordinator, as well as Richard Barrick, who is the Land Use Director. Today's Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, ULURP, public hearing is being conducted via the WebEx video conferencing platform. There are two items on the agenda this evening. Please note that this virtual hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. It will be available for viewing on Borough President Adams' website, his One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. Viewers may also submit comments to Ask Eric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for Borough President Adams' consideration. Please call the first item and let us begin.
Calendar item number 1-200086 CMK 200087 ZRK.
This application submitted by 1529-33 60th Street LLC pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the New York City Charter for a zoning map amendment to change from M1-1 to R7A / C2-4A project area of tax lots fronting 60th Street between 15th Avenue and the Long Island Railroad's Bay Ridge Freight Line, and a zoning tax amendment to designate an MIH area over the entire rezoning area. Such actions would facilitate the development of three separate mixed-use buildings of 7 to 8 stories with a total of 102 dwelling units, of which 32 would be affordable pursuant to M1 MIH, more than 32,200 square feet of ground floor retail, and 31 accessory parking spaces in Brooklyn Community District 12. Community Board 12 has not yet submitted a position on this application. Borough President Adams will hold off on making any decisions until he is provided an update by the board. Remind viewers that if you wish to testify, you must use the chat function to indicate your intent to speak. After the presentation and question and answer portion, we will call speakers in order of chat requests. Would Eric Palatnik, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present the application?
I'd be happy to. My name is Eric Palatnik, and I'm a representative of the applicant. Would you like me to present?
Yes, please.
Okay. I will go through the presentation in its entirety for you, but I'd like to just give you a little bit of history first. First of all, thank everybody. Thank you. Thank everybody that's on the call, the Borough President, for allocating staff in a time of limited staff to the time that's necessary for this public review. I'd also like to thank the community. They've been actively engaged in this process, including Community Board 12 that met on this application twice in a public hearing before COVID in the land use, and then they heard it again. They have a final recommendation, as you said before, that should be forthcoming to you. I haven't seen it yet myself. COVID happened in the middle. It was when this was all happening. This is an application that's certified at city planning, and it's been certified, as you mentioned a moment ago, to allow for an R7A zoning district with a C24 overlay that would allow 3 different buildings on sites A, B, and C. As you can see, the 3 buildings are in a area or a block that is primarily commercial and automotive related uses. You can even see from above some of the buses on the left side in the corner, but there's a furniture store there on top of where the tennis court is on the roof. And there's some automotive uses that you can't see where Site C is. And the reason for that, if you can see all the housing around it, is that it's a manufacturing zone that was never changed as the zoning around it has changed. And as a result, you're left with this one block that has been underdeveloped for years. And you can see down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen right there, Maple Lanes, which was also the subject of a rezoning, which was also a manufacturing zone before, and now has housing being built on it. What we're asking the permission of the city, the community, and of your office is to allow us to rezone from a manufacturing to an R, essentially an R7A with a commercial overlay that will allow for buildings similar to what's on the Maple Avenue, the Maple Lane site, which is down in the lower right-hand corner, a little bit taller. Now, on the issue of a little bit taller, and then I'll scroll through the slides, and I know there are a lot of slides, but I won't be on all of them the whole time at all, and by any stretch. Uh, Site C, we'll start with, is down at the bottom. That's proposed to be an 8-story building. That building is proposed to have a total of 40 apartments, 12 of which will be affordable, and will have 25 parking spaces. Uh, During the discussions when we were at the community board, sites A and B became the subject of much discussion relating to their height. They were originally proposed to be 7 stories and at a height of 75 feet. Uh, they took a lot of discussion at the community board level, and a lot of the neighbors that are behind us on 59th Street expressed a lot of concern about those buildings on sites A and B, and you'll hear from them, I'm sure, later. Their concerns are not unfounded. They're legitimate. They've been living next door to low-rise buildings, albeit automotive, where I could spew out fumes in a manufacturing zone, where I could build the most intense things and have stacks and go to DEP and emit auto emissions and emit anything I can in a manufacturing zone on all those sites on that block right next to them. And there are some automotive uses there that do just that. I think what I heard from everybody is they don't like the idea of having tall buildings behind them. And we tried our best to accommodate them by reducing the height of the buildings on sites A and B. And we're trying to do that through creating a restrictive declaration that would limit any residential development there to no more than 6 stories in height, or a height of 65 feet on site A, and on site B, a site of 65 feet for most of the building, except for the front portion where we ask for a small little 7th floor, but only at the front. And I'll show you that in a plan. So the idea was to take a floor off of sites A and B at the bequest of the neighbors. Now, I don't know if it's enough to satisfy their concerns, and they'll let you know, but that's what I'm about to present to you. What I'm also going to present to you on sites A and B is an increase in parking. We originally came to the proposal with just 31 parking spaces on all of the sites. And although that was legal by what the zoning were asking you for, it was not to the satisfaction of the community. And we heard that. We heard horror stories about them circling the block looking for parking. Now, we understand that they have a real issue with parking. There's a precinct around the corner that is doing a great job. I support the police 100%, and they obviously use some of the spots on the street for their parking, and I think that causes a bit of an impediment that the community has to live with. I think they felt that if they'll tell you clearer that we added residential, they thought it would have an impact. So we added more parking. We went above and beyond, and the plans I'm about to present to you are different than what was listed at the beginning of this on the ULURP application, in the sense that, again, to summarize, sites A and B came down in size. Site A lost an entire floor. Site B lost a partial floor, mostly at the rear by the neighbors. And sites A and B both had parking added to it. So the parking went from 31 spaces to 72 spaces. Now, with that having been said, I don't know. I forget the gentleman's name who's controlling things. Is it David? David. Hi, David. Can you click to the next screen, and I'll start going through to show everybody what I just spoke about. This is just a summary of everything I just spoke about. It's a lot of words describing everything I just said. So I'm going to go forward. You can stay there for 1 second, David. On the right-hand side, that represents what we're proposing. And you could see what I just said is now the proposal that we're asking you for, which would be building A, a 6-story and cellar building to contain 33,000 square feet of floor area with an FAR of 4.17. That's 6. Originally, it was filed with 7 stories. Okay. Building B would be a 6-story building with a penthouse. A cellar and penthouse, they call it. That's the partial 7th floor at the front that I spoke about. That's the reduced building. Building C stayed the same as it was originally proposed. It hasn't changed. And we're asking there the zoning now would be to create it as an 8-story building with a 4.6 floor area ratio with about 62,000 square feet of floor area. And building C is the one that's up against the freight line that you mentioned a moment ago. If you can click to the next slide, David, please. Could click to the next slide. This just gives you the same aerial you saw before. Click to the next slide. Next slide. I'll just say next, if it's okay with you, because we can click through. Stop there for a second. This gives you an idea now of what you're looking at on the street. This is what I'm talking about, is what's going on in the neighborhood. View 3, the nicest looking building in the block, that's our site. So we built that about 2 or 3 years ago, and we did it because we have our own offices that we needed, and they were built for that. That'll be incorporated into the new design when things are built into the new building. But you can see there's a couple of residential houses on the left, which are very nice, if not somewhat dated in time, but very well kept. And if you can keep clicking to the next one, please, David. Here you can start to see, you could freeze here for a second. On the left, go right there, freeze for 1 second. You see accentuations by design. That's on the corner. That's the building that had the tennis court on the so you can see there, that's a furniture store. That is not our site. Our site starts where the gray building is in the view number 8. If you can click to the next one, please, David. There you can get more of a perspective. Top right corner, view 11, gives you a view of Site C. Site C is not a good-looking site. Site C, in my opinion, is not what's necessary in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Just on Site C, I see trucks in the street. I see forklifts on the sidewalk. I see goods and materials on the street. You can see the rising residential building behind it, and I see cars everywhere. I respectfully am submitting that this block, although these are necessary businesses and needed, this isn't necessarily the right location. You go to all the aerials, and when you look to the left on view 10, if you didn't know any better, view 10 would say you're in a completely different world. And I would say view 10 represents more symbolism of what the block should be, if not at a larger density, because unfortunately in this day and age, we need density to get to affordability. And lower left corner, 12, site 12, again, shows you part of the car problem. You could even see the van there with the airbag imploded in the lower left corner. Obviously, the auto shops are using the very street parking that's being complained of for their own usage, which they should. They're entitled to, because they're businesses and they're doing their thing. But I don't, for these reasons, I don't think the parking problems that you're hearing about are quite as substantial necessarily, because I think once we address the uses on the block the way we're proposing, you'll see a lot of the cars that just you're looking at in these photos eliminated entirely, in addition to the spots that we've created on site. So if you can keep to the next one, please, David. Here again, you can see, what the condition. This is what the M1 attracts here. Amazon is not coming to this block. Tech companies are not coming to this block. Workforce units are not coming to this block. It's a block that's not like in the hub of transit. It's in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The community board's office is a block away. It's the center of the neighborhood. And it really should be developed with something that allows a future that's representative of what we all think New York City should be. I get the height might not be where everybody likes it, but at least the uses, I think, should be. If you keep going to the next slide. Here, I think we've seen enough of the block. You start to get the gist. It wavers. You get the look at the forklift. Right. Keep going to the next, please, David. Next. This is the zoning change map. This is the whole thing that we're asking tonight. This is what we're discussing with you. The left before, the right side is after. In the middle of the page on the right side, you can see all the little dots floating around with all the slash marks. Those are the blocks in question. You see there's an R78 pointing to it. That's what we're asking you to do. What's important for you to see there is it's an R6A right next door to where Maple Lanes is. And it's also important for you to see this, which I hope I could on the screen and you could see it. But what this is, and I could submit this later, you're not going to see it, David. What I'm showing you here, and I point to some of them here, are all of the rezonings that have occurred within the area there. And that's what that page is showing you through the years. So, and I'll submit that later. And I apologize for such a poor quality. You can go back to the presentation. Thanks for flashing with me so quickly, David. Very impressed. Uh, the point that I'm making is that this map that you're looking at right now with the R6A around it and the R6 up top, all of that is the subject of previous rezonings that have occurred. So this is not a strange phenomenon that's happening in the area. It might be one of the last ones or the most recent ones, and I get it may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I don't think now is the time to be telling New York City that, hey, we're closed. I didn't think that before this all happened, and now I'm even more saying that we all have children and we have grandchildren. God bless everybody, and they want to live where we are, and this showed you more than ever. We want them next to us. We don't need some strangers taking care of our families. We need our children and our grandchildren living next to us in neighborhoods the way New York City was built, and that's how we got to be such a great city to begin with. So I'm very bullish on this application for these reasons. If you can go to the next slide, please, David. This just gives you the rezoning area again. To the next one, please. To next. We'll just click right through because a lot of this is just maps. Next, 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 next. Okay, so this, if you go back, I'm going to ask you after this, David, you're going to play a little bit of a guessing game. And I'm going to get you to the next page after this. This shows you what we was certified at city planning. The buildings that are in the top right corners are showing you 7-story buildings. B and A, they're labeled. You can see on their roof. What I'm going to ask David to flip forward in a confusing way and right now, so we could skip 70 pages, is to go to what we're proposed. David, if you look on the right side of the screens you're on, you see where it says 21519? Okay, what we're trying to get to, and if you see at the bottom it says Site A, if you scroll about 40 pages, you're going to get to ones that have the date 6/25/20. So if you just keep scrolling, I'm going to take you through. These are the old plans that were certified. That's what David. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Seeing 19, keep going. These are the old plans, people. This is what I'm telling you. Change. Keep going. And I apologize. There are dogs in the neighborhood, and I can't tell them to stop. All right, stop. Go back a couple of slides, please, David. I apologize for the dogs barking. For those of you who have ever seen Seinfeld, I can't stop them. Click back, one stop, if you can. One more, and make sure I start at the beginning. Nope, go forward. Forward one more, please. There you go. Okay. So the reason what we just went through, and I can go back, I'd be happy to go back to everybody who wants to go back. What I just clicked fast forward through is what was presented to the community board. Those were the plans that showed buildings A and B at a taller height and with less parking. What I've now got in front of you can see clearly on the left-hand side is what's called the revised proposed conditions. Those are the plans that we discussed at the community board. We didn't come to an agreement. They voted on it, but we made an offering to reduce the height of the residential buildings to 6 stories on both buildings, although we made one a partial 7th now, which is building B. I'm going to show you that, and to increase the parking. And that's what these plans are representing. So they're not what's reflected in your ULURP papers. These are not in your ULURP application. These are new. They have not been presented to anybody before. And if you can click, David, to the next page. There you go. Freeze there for a second. This is Site A. Site A is the smallest of the sites. That's the one that's pretty close to the tracks. You could see that on the left-hand side, you might not be able to read what's going on there so clearly, but the building has 33,000 square feet of floor area and about approximately 6,000 square feet of commercial floor area. It was reduced in size by about 4,000 square feet from what the community board saw, and it's now 6 stories for a height of 65 feet. The community board saw 75 feet, now has 15 parking spaces within it, and it was the community board saw no parking spaces within it. So the number of dwelling units in that building are 18 units, and 5 of them are affordable. So there's 18 units, 5 which are affordable, and there's 15 parking spaces. 18 units, 15 parking spaces. As everybody who with land use knowledge that's on the phone knows, the 18 units under an R7A zoning don't require any parking, and we're providing 15. And we're obviously most buildings in higher density districts don't require parking because you can't build it around the city for if you had a building to build all the parking all the time. But here we are trying to accommodate them. The concerns, when I say them, I mean the concerns that have been issued. If you keep clicking next, David, to the next page, this shows you, you could freeze right there. This you did perfect right there. This shows you what I just told you. This is building A. You can see down in the lower bottom, it says site A. You can see that I'm showing you on the left side, it's 6 stories and it's 65 feet in height. That's what we're trying to make the assurance that any residential will not exceed that height. The ground floor, that's a shade of pink or mauve. I don't know which color that is. That's showing you that will be a full lot line. So that extends to the rear as in a commercial district. So what you're seeing there is a building that has a 1-story base that's 15 feet tall that extends to the rear, just like the commercial buildings do now. Every commercial building on the block goes to the rear right now. They all can. And here we're setting back above it for the residential for 35 feet, which, if you notice, is 5 feet bigger than what we're required to do. And again, we're willing to obligate to that. So we're trying to do a little bit better than we have to. We're not making everybody in the room happy. If you can go to the next page, please, David. This just shows you the parking and gives you floor plans. It shows you the ramp going down into the cellar level. And just keep clicking, David. These are relatively boring. I can come back to them if everybody wants. This is the first part. It shows you the layout for a second. And you can freeze right here is fine too. This just starts to show you what are like and how they lay out. The units lay out so that you've got a lot of larger units. You've got a lot of 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, because there's a big demand in the neighborhood for larger units. There's some smaller. I don't think there are any studios within anything. If you can click to the next one, please, David. This just gives you, now we're into site B. So now we're doing the same analysis. I'm presenting to you exactly the same way what we did on site A, which is to the right, on site B. Site B is a larger site. So site B, what we're asking you to do on site B is, this is the one we're asking you where we've accommodated, or we've made amendments, I should say, to the plans to make it a partial 7th floor at the top. So we've taken off the rear portion of the 7th. And what this building creates, if it's approved, is a 4.3 floor area ratio, where the district of an R7A would allow 4.6. It has about 47,000 square feet of residential area, about 10,600 square feet of commercial. We reduced 4,000 feet of residential space by taking the top portion off from where it was when we presented to the community board. It would stand 65 feet in the rear and 75 feet in the front. It would have 34, 10 of which would be affordable, and 31 parking spaces. So again, we're trying to get parking almost 1 for 1 for each unit. We're slightly short, but we're well beyond what you need under zoning. We filed it with 15. So we more than doubled that building for what we had earlier, and we're asking to bind ourselves to that. For building C, if you keep clicking, actually, I'm sorry, David, I jumped ahead of myself. This again is building B. This starts to show you just the looking at it from above. This is a plot plan. If you click to the next one, David, this gives you an elevation of the building. This represents what I was telling you before. If you pause here for a moment, and that word, I can't even say that word without having a duplicate meeting in my head. If you freeze here for a moment, it almost gets me nauseous. The portion that's at the penthouse level is the setback that I was speaking about. That previously was depicted to the community board and to everybody in the surrounding homes as a 7th floor. So we've pulled that back. Again, it's not all the way back like Building A was. Building A took that floor off entirely. But here we left a portion of it because we've got to get the affordable units. And Building C is the one that creates the most. That creates 12 affordable units. And it creates 40 apartments. Excuse me, I misspoke. I'm on B. I misspoke. That creates 10 affordable units and 34 apartments. So that is what Building B does. It has 31 spaces. So almost all of it is parked. As I said before, it's 10,000 square feet of commercial and about 47,000 square feet of residential. If you can click to the next one, please. For the parking downstairs, it'll all be valet, all the parking. If you can click to the next one, please. I'm almost at the end. Click to the next. Next. Okay, this shows you the partial 6th, and then you could go to, fine, you can freeze there. Site C, again, it's the same analysis that I was depicting to you a moment ago on sites A and B. Now we're on the site that's up against the railroad. Because of that, we did not set it back at all. We did not play that. We did not reduce the height at all. We did not do that because there was no reason to. We have Maple Lanes, the former Maple Lanes, right across the street that's being constructed as residential. That's equally as tall as us. And I have here, and I wish I had a better representation of it for you. But I have, give me 1 second here. Well, I can't really show it to you, but this is Maple Lanes, which is down in the Mauve, is 75 feet in height. So we're quite equivalent to the height that, 70 feet in height, excuse me. So we're very similar in that, where we're proposing to be a height of 85 feet. A little bit taller, but you get the affordable units out of it. And that's the building I was speaking of a moment ago, where we get 40 apartments, 12 of which will be affordable. That will have 25 parking spaces in it. It was previously proposed to have 16. So we upped the number of parking spaces in all the buildings. We went from 31 to 72 total. We ended up reducing the size of 2 of the 3 buildings. We now have 92 units. We had 102 before. We now have 27 units that are affordable, and we could go through the affordability next. And I'll go to that screen next. And David, if you can go to the next screen and next. Freeze there for 1 second. Go back one if you can. Sorry. Right here shows you building C again at the 8 stories. So this shows you the building against the railway track, freight line. It's got the parking down at the cellar level, ground floor commercial, and then residential above. And that is to the full build out. We have not reduced it. We have not made any changes to that building at all, except for the number of parking spaces, increasing the number of parking spaces on that building. And that's to the concern. So if you click to the next one, please. Click to next. We can click to when you start seeing numbers. Click next, next, next. Sorry, I feel like I'll freeze there for a second if you want. It just gives you an idea of how things lay out, of a perspective here of what they're going to look like. You could see that we kind of fit in the fabric of the new. You look at the end of the block where it says Maple at the top of the screen. You know, we fit, we blend. If you look what's going on in the bottom of the screen on 15th Avenue, we don't. I respectfully submit to everybody in New York it's time to do what's in the top of the screen, and I respect it. I live in the other buildings, I really do, and I don't mean to change a block, but this block in particular, is crying for something to happen with all the commercial uses that are there. I think that many of them actually, by the way, the retail and all that is not being displaced, and any of the retail that's not active manufacturing is not being displaced, and nobody that's actually there in any sort of use will be displaced at all. They're allowed to stay through the rezoning. They'll be grandfathered in place. So we're not looking to displace any lifelong businesses that are there, except for the ones that are on our sites, which they are making it, arrangements with the owners. If you click through to the next screen, to the next one, we'll go through the affordability numbers I'll present to you. You could freeze right here. Go back, please. So what this to tell you, if you look at the top, this is the entire development, and this is a chart that's showing you what numbers things are going to cost for units and how much money people need to earn. The left side, it says units. If you look at the top, the very top, so you could read the screen, so you could understand what you're looking at. So if you have questions, you know what you're looking at. The top of it says MIH option 1. It also says it down at the bottom. And it says even further 25% at 60% AMI. Of course, for those that have been through land use before, but for those that haven't, that means that 25% of the floor area would be at 60% of the area median income. And this is for all of the sites. It says A and B, but it's for A, B, and C. And what this is telling you on the left, if you go down to the next row, gives you the unit size, the number of units, the income target, meaning if it's a market rate apartment or if it's under the affordability spectrum. Next, what the monthly rent would be, what the household size would be, and what the max income and what the annual income would be. So, with all of that as an example, what this is telling you is that as we're proposing it, if you go to the first one, there are 9 one-bedroom units that are market rate, and they anticipate to rent them at $2,159 a month, period. That's the same for everything it says. If you go into the income target column, market. That's the first 4 down. You go to the next one where it says 1 bedroom. Now you start getting into what would be regulated under the MIH affordability program. And in this proposal, the way we proposed it, there'll be one bedroom offered at 60% AMI. And that one bedroom would have a rent of $1,121 a month. and it would be eligible to people earning $44,000 to $51,000, depending upon the number of people in their household. And it gives you what their annual income would be. Next column, next row, if you keep going down, it keeps doing that unit by unit. So in 2 bedrooms, there are two at 60% AMI, and it gives you what their rent would be. And if you go down, there's 3 bedrooms, there are three at 60%. If you keep scrolling down a few more, you see the number 40% AMI. That reflects the apartments that are being rented or being made available through the MIH program, or will be, which is, of course, regulated through HPD, not through the applicant. And they'll be working with a not-for-profit administrator that will be implementing those. They've been interviewing a few in the neighborhood, but they haven't decided on any yet. But they don't get to decide that of who comes into the building. That's all subject to a public process through a not-for-profit administrator to be determined. But you keep going down, you see the 40% units. Now, the 40% units, a 1 bedroom would rent for $721 and would be eligible to one family that earns $29,000 a month, 20 a year. And it keeps going down all the way down until you get to 40%, you get to 100%. And then if you scroll to the next page, please, David. If you get down there, the bottom of that page gives you pretty much the summary of how it goes, of how it's breaking down. So this is telling you that you're getting 24 affordable units, and I think that number might be off by 2 units, but it tells you how much it's averaging to be, and that the average AMI averages at 60%. Oh, this is for the 60% scenario, excuse me. So at the 60% scenario, there'd be 24 units. So that lower box tells you exactly what would happen if option one was chosen. So now, if you're knowing that and seeing how everything goes, David, if you can scroll to the next page, this shows you, if you go to the top where it's in the black, MIH option two, 30% at 80% AMI. This increases the number of units that would be available, but also increases their income level. And if you go and you take a look here and you see max income in the column there, the second one from the right, that column, if you compare it to the one before, is higher. And if you look at the rents are higher. And if you look at the AMIs are higher because it's a higher income classification. That's what it's meant to represent. And that might be your cup of tea. And we're interested in hearing what you have to say about that. And we're open to either scenario. It doesn't impact our overall end finances so much, either which way. We've ran the numbers, and we're happy to go with the lower AMI if that's decided, or the higher. But this is what this does. And if you go to the next page, David, and I'm done with my presentation in 2 minutes. If you go here, the box in the lower right corner gives you there how many units you get and what the averages are. So before I told you it was 24 when it was a lower AMI. Now you get 27 units that are affordable. And before I told you, if you looked at the bottom, what the average AMI was, before it was 60%. Now this is 80%. So you see that you get less units in the affordability range with the option two. If you go to the next page, please, David, and I'm almost done. This is the grand finale. This is if I don't know which borough gets the fireworks show tonight, but this is my fireworks show. This gives you a very clear comparison of everything I just said. A cheat sheet. I used to call it a cheat sheet when I was in English class in junior high. I used to make that little thing and have all the little notes on it. Not that I ever did anything wrong, but if you were to create a cheat sheet, this is what it would look like for this project. And what it shows you clearly is the before and after. The left column tells you like all the stats about each building, about the building, and it's the same on the left. Building A is at the top, building B is in the middle, building C is in the bottom. And then it shows you that middle column also, if you keep going, shows you what we filed and what we presented to the community board. And on the right side shows you what we changed and what we did. So you can kind of do your own comparison. I'll kind of freeze it there in this screen so you could all, if you wanted to sort of pick at the numbers and understand them better, this kind of does it for you. You don't need me to explain it to you. It shows it to you. That's my presentation. I hope I didn't waste too much time doing it. I don't have a timer on myself, but I hope I got through it quick enough for you. I'm happy to answer any questions about anything that I can, and I apologize again for the dog barking. Not really. I like the dog barking, but sorry to interrupting it.
So thank you again, Mr. Palatnik, for your presentation. And I know some of actually a lot of our questions you've already touched on in your presentation, but just for purposes of for the record and for people who may not have access to the actual presentation who are calling in, I'm going to ask you to probably to repeat yourself for some of the things that you've already said. So the first question actually did.
Good, because my family tells me not to all the time, so I'm happy to be given the chance to, and as part of my job.
Okay. So the first question actually deals with the income, rents, and distribution. And I know you had the chart. So maybe if you
Mhm.
can go back and
Yeah,
specifically
David, if
just,
you can click backwards, David, I don't know if you could pull that up. It's just a couple from the ends. You don't have to go from the if you can go from the end, it's probably easier.
and just maybe
Because
pull out a few examples in terms of the income range and the rents,
yeah, I'd be happy to.
for people who are
It's
calling
confusing.
in.
It's very confusing. It's a lot of numbers, especially on a Zoom or a WebEx call. David, I gave you too many compliments before. I need your help. I don't know if
I think he's still there.
David can hear us. Maybe he got clicked out somehow, but he looks like he's there. There he goes. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry, David, didn't mean to put pressure on you. Go back. There's no pressure. We got all night. Nobody's going anywhere. Go back. Okay, so I could pause. Well, go forward or back, one or the other from here. It doesn't make it. I could stop right there. So thank you, David. Sorry to make light at your expense. MIH, this is what this is showing you, just to give you a starting point, and you can tell me where to go and where you want me to walk it through. This is the option 2 scenario for the revised plans that show you what all the rents and the unit distributions would be uh, if it was at option 2, 80%, 30% of the units at 80% AMI. I could start there and go slow and go through it a little bit if you'd like me to
You
slow it
don't have to
down
go
here.
line by line, but just give an example in terms of like if it's a one bedroom, what the rent would be.
Yeah. So okay. So let's go down. The easiest place to go down is if you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, right below where it says market. So it'd be the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one down, which is one bedroom. Everybody see that? It's after 4 bedroom. It's the fifth row down. It says one bedroom. It says number of units 1. It says income target 80%. Right? Am I making sense there?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're trying to that rent would be $1,638. Excuse me, 1,300. I missed. I'm in the wrong line. It'd be 1,350. So one bedroom would be in this building, and for the affordable units, $1,300. To give you an example, if you looked up top on that, if you go up a few columns to the numbers 2159 in that same row, you see a one bedroom in the marketplace goes for about $2,100. So that gives you the comparison of what the MIH program. And again, the market is what our consultant pulls out of the stats that are being published, and they're not toyed with. It's just what's published data from what units rent for, and the rent under the AMIs are published data from the federal government. So that is none of that is really none of that is our creation, but that gives you a comparison. So if you keep go one more down, sort of play through a little bit, a 2 bedroom at the 80% AMI level, that would rent for $1,600 a month. And to go over, if that was a two-person household, so if it was people living together, they could earn approximately $68,000 together to qualify for that. And I think neither one of them could earn more than 39. I think that's what the right column is telling me, although I'm not 1,000% sure. But for sure, the column before that, the two of them together come out and earn more than $68,000. And if you compare that apartment, a 2 bedroom, if you go up again to the 2 bedroom in the marketplace, the 2 bedroom in the marketplace rents for $3,100. So you're going from a difference of 3,146 to 1,600. Now, to go down further, because the MIH represents a range, it would also include units at 60% AMI. So if you go down a little further down to where you see the number 60% AMI, you can see a one bedroom to a family or an individual that's in a one bedroom, or it would be at $1,100 a month, compared to a market rate, which would be $2,159, compared to, if you go up the column, down the column a little bit more, to $1,353 if you were at 80% AMI. So it's a couple $100 cheaper a month by being in the 60%. So that's how that chart reads. None of these numbers are presented, of course, by the applicant. These are simply none of these numbers are created necessarily by the applicant. We simply are presenting them, but they are simply the product of what the program creates, and it's meant to represent that.
That was helpful. Thank you. Richard, did you have any questions on that before I go on? I think he's on mute. Okay. So I did have actually one question. When you went through the sites, so site C, you said was 70 feet. Is that 7 stories?
Yes, I see stories. That's the one that's against straight line. That's the one that doesn't have any homes behind.
Okay, but site A and B are 6 stories.
Site A, which is the smaller, sites A and B are both up against the homes.
Yep.
A will be 6, you're correct. B will be 7, but
7.
only a partial 7 at the front. We cut the back part.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
And, well, goes down on one screen.
So the next question deals with marketing strategies. So please identify what marketing strategies, such as designating one of the community's affordable housing nonprofits as the affordable housing administering agent, would be used in the tenant selection process in order to ensure the highest level of participation from Community District 12, especially those that are rent burdened or at risk of displacement. Would such marketing strategy start off with a financial literacy campaign to assist area residents in becoming lottery eligible?
Okay. Uh, I cannot give you a detailed answer on this at this time, other than to tell you that we have started to talk with not-for-profit administrators, and they will be implementing the program in accordance with the HPD portal as they're required to do. So HPD is going to be setting the parameters for the marketing, and we are going to comply with them. Uh, we are happy to outreach as needed locally to the community board. Right now, I know there's a community preference in place right now. I also know there's a challenge to that, but whatever the law may be at the time that we actually come to market, we will be complying with. As far as the literacy program, I've asked around about that. I'm not familiar with that, and neither was my consultant. But it sounds like a phenomenal idea and a great project too, because I've spent some time speaking on panels around the city, and I spent a lot of time talking to people who want to live in these buildings. It's funny, they're actually the people that want to live in these, the people that are looking for affordable housing are my biggest fans when I go into a neighborhood, and because they like the housing. But what, to your point, they're knowledgeable in how to navigate the process. So I've spent a lot of time, and a lot of them, of course, are suffering from disadvantages with literacy. See firsthand, and we commit to engage in whatever program is available, because it is a big problem. They don't have the same basis of knowledge that everybody else does, and they can't read what's going on to understand it better. So unless somebody actually presents it to them, they don't understand what's happening. So I was involved in that. I stay involved in that, and I feel it's very important. So does my client.
So just want to follow up on the literacy. It's more about helping people become aware that there will be a lottery process and that whatever they would need to submit to be able to register. So it's really a teaching session to help people provide perfect submissions.
Guidance to create the application, to guide you through the application process. Yeah, no, I've been over in Community Board 13 working on that. You'd be proud to know Community Board 13 is working very hard. Uh, I don't know what any other community boards may be. I don't mean to exclude them from the conversation, but yes, I understand what you're saying, and we are committed to it.
Sorry.
I think another question that you may have had for me, if I can cut off.
There are a lot of affordable housing providers in the borough do this as a service. So they're also out there to perhaps be retained to help with that outreach.
Yeah, they've started to do the discussions. Of course, everything really got, of course, put on hold as we got into the process. So now that we're thawing out a little bit and people are getting out there and things are engaged a little bit more, I'm sure by the end of the summer, which is hopefully the time the ULURP process will really commence in earnest, uh, we'll have somebody in place.
So the next question, and you've touched on this in terms of the community expressing concerns about the lack of overnight parking and the anticipation that new households car ownership would exceed the proposed parking. What consideration has been given to reducing the represented commercial floor area as a means to affordably accommodate more space for car parking? I know you talked about it, but just for
Yeah,
the record, if you could just,
we
talk
took
about
some.
it.
We only took. We didn't. Whether or not some people find it meaningful or not is it will be up for debate. But we did reduce some of the commercial on building A by 2,000 square feet. But more importantly, we equally reduced more residential. We cut residential as well to create the parking. So we cut from both. And the reason we did was very simple. I'm not a huge fan, nor are most people, of ground floor residential uh, on busy blocks. It's a tough quality of life. It's nice on a nice quiet block, but when you get to a block such as this, it's clearly a mixed use block. As far as uses that go on it, it's nice to get the residents a little bit above everything. So we try to keep, from a planning perspective, some ground floor commercial. Also, the commercial that we're seeking to maintain is relatively small amounts of space. It's not seeking a big box or anything. The idea of it is to create local retail services that people need that you can't get on Amazon. We're all getting Amazon now, but you can't get your shoes shined on Amazon. You can't get your hair cut on Amazon. You can't get your nails done on Amazon. Luckily, there's a few things that they haven't controlled us with yet that we still need in our community. So that was the rationale behind our proposal. And the thinking again, too, is that the commercial has less of a demand for parking because it is local retail. And the idea would be that it will draw people from the neighborhood that can walk there and use it. We're hoping not too many people are going to go to a dry cleaner that they have to drive to. If people actually go back to wearing clothes again after this. So,
Thank you. So community residents living behind the northern sites have expressed concern regarding the proposed number of stories, and you talked about this too.
yeah.
Reportedly, there is an intent to eliminate the top floor. So what mechanism would ensure such reduced height?
What we've been promulgating and asking to do, and we have not yet engaged in formal conversations with anybody about it, but is to enter into a restrictive declaration, not with the city, but hopefully with the councilman's office or with a community group or with the community board. When I say not with the city, I mean not involving the ULURP process, but independent of the ULURP process, that would reduce and restrict any residential development height. And we'd be happy to write it up and to draft it and to file it and to enter into an agreement. The people that are building, the developers, are local. Some people love them, some people may not, but they're not going anywhere. They're committed to the neighborhood. They've owned these properties for a long time, and uh, between the legal commitments as well as the personal commitments, we're hoping that's enough to satisfy everybody. But that's the best we can offer. There is no other way to craft a ULURP proposal of this nature without a restricted declaration of some sort.
Okay. So our next question deals with the borough president's policy to promote sustainable and renewable energy.
Yes.
So what consideration has been given, possibly in cooperation with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA or NYPA, to the incorporation of passive house design, blue, green, or white roof covering and or DEP rain gardens?
We're committed to that as well. It's good for the development. It's good for the neighborhood, for everything. There will be a white roof that we're proposing. We will have bioswales in the tree wells. We are proposing to have the most up-to-date insulated windows in place. and of course a high efficiency HVAC system. But in addition to that, we will have a DEP rain garden. In addition to that, I don't know what will be created between now and then, but we do remain committed. Anything that reduces the output into the storm area will help our development, because the things that everybody said at the community board level is that garbage pickup is a problem, and there's garbage in the streets. And if the storm basins are overloaded, we all know what happens, and those clog. So that's not good for residential development either. So it's a mutually symbiotic relationship, which again is why I think this is a good development, because it will instill people to improve upon current conditions.
Thank you. So our last question deals with the borough president's policy to maximize good quality jobs for Brooklynites. If you could outline what steps will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises in the process of construction on this site.
That they've already had a conversation with local organization through some of their affiliates. I have to find out the name of it. I don't know what group it is for, but the idea of their development is to use source labor from minority women-owned businesses as much as is possible. There will be a competitive bidding process, of course, as they go through it. But we encourage, and it's been our experience, that the smaller people fight harder and try harder for the jobs and are more competitive. So we find that when we get the entrepreneurial people behind the jobs, we get better pricing on things. So it works to everybody's advantage. Also, I've worked on other developments in the past myself, where we've reached out with community groups, and we're going to work with the community board to find more, to find local youth labor that might be interested in working on the development as well. Oftentimes, what we found as I've been going through the process through the years is there are a lot of young student trade schools. This goes against across every single demographic. They don't want to be scientists. They might want to be carpenters. And we try to outreach to them, and the owners are doing that as well. So we're very sensitive to that, and it's something they want to see also.
Thank you. So that concludes our suggested questions for you tonight on this particular calendar item. Ina, are you controlling the chat statements from the public?
I am looking for any indication from members of the public who wish to speak. We have one
Let me read
person.
this first. Hold on one second. We just want to remind viewers that if you wish to testify, you must use the WebEx chat function to identify and indicate your intent to speak. After the presentation and question and answer portion, we will call on the speakers in order of chat requests.
Okay, we had one person request to speak earlier in the presentation. So I think that person, I would like to ask that person now to indicate their availability to speak.
Do you have the name, Ina?
Yes, Sharon Fuchs, F-U-C-H-A-S.
Sharon Fuchs,
Fuchs.
are you available?
It's possible people are using technology that they're not able to signal on the chat function. So I wonder some of the call-in lines, whether we have to ask individually if they wanted to speak on this item.
Oh, I mean, she's saying she's unavailable to unmute herself. I don't know.
Are we able to identify what phone number that is?
Yes, I can go to unmute the speaker.
Okay.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you speak this? I live on 59th Street. I'm also a member of the Community Board 12. The neighbors on the block have asked me to speak on their behalf. They're very upset about the height of the building, the lack of parking, garbage. We spoke at the community board. We feel the height is still too high and it blocks a lot of the neighbors. It blocks a lot of light in the people's houses and it destroys their quality of life. My husband also wants to say something. Go ahead.
Can he identify himself first before he speaks?
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
If you could just
My
state your name.
Abe Fuchs. I live on 59th Street. I was at both board meetings that they're building this. Basically, there's tremendous amount built.
We can't hear you.
Excuse me? There's about 100 across the street. On 61st Street and 62nd and 63rd, all commercial. It's all full of automotive stuff that he quoted, and I'm quoting. Okay, our block of 60th Street.
I can't hear. Richard, can you hear? I can't hear what
I'm
he's
not
saying.
hearing.
We can't hear you.
You want me to go on the phone?
That sounds better, please.
You want us to go on the phone?
We hear you now.
Okay, so
You hear me now?
Perfect.
Right. Okay, my name, well, I'll start again. Okay, you got everything? My name is Abe Fuchs. I'm on 59th Street. Okay. Here's, the issue here is basically that he's developing a block that really doesn't need any developing.
You're dropping off.
Okay, I've indicated that anyone who's having trouble being heard can also enter their comments into the chat window.
just press 10.
Abe, do you want to start again?
Ina, can we take the next person and then go back to Mr. Fuchs?
One moment.
There's Yiddy Kish in the chat that needs to be unmuted.
Yes, let me try to.
Hello, do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes, but there's a lot of background noise.
A lot of over my.
Are you on more than one
Are you
device?
on more than one device? I'm only on the computer, but I see the mute keeps flashing. Do you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes. Okay, can I speak?
please.
Please. Hi, my name is Yati Kish, and I'm a neighbor on 59th Street. And I am here to be the voice of so many other neighbors who were not able to participate tonight, who are extremely disturbed and upset by this project. We do not want this project to take place at all, and the pathetic reduction of one story really doesn't cut it for us. Our light will be severely diminished. Our quality of life goes down. We currently have no parking. No matter how many more parking spaces we will offer, it doesn't cut it. There just aren't enough parking spaces as it is in the neighborhood. Sanitation is a problem. Our streets are overloaded with strewn trash all over the place. We don't need more residents. We don't need retail businesses. Every retail business, it sounds wonderful, but we're not going to walk there. There are going to be more cars, more traffic on 60th Street. 60th Street is congested as it is. We don't need more. We are perfectly happy having the car mechanic businesses behind us. The block has a combination of one story up until three-story structures. We like it that way. We're not happy with a six-story coming down from seven-story. We believe that this project will further the objective of a wealthy developer, which is to increase his own personal bottom line. A sprinkling of affordable apartments serve his own personal gain in the form of tax shelters. He doesn't care about my children and grandchildren. In today's climate, all across the United States, and especially in New York City, the objectives of the rich to get richer at the expense of those whose voices are not as powerful and those who cannot afford to hire smooth-talking attorneys will no longer be the acceptable modus operandi in New York. We're hurt, we feel unrepresented, and we vehemently oppose this project. We beg you, please do not approve the zoning amendment request. We are perfectly happy the way it is. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Fuchs, is he back? Ina, is there anyone else waiting to speak?
No, I don't think so. It was indicated that Mr. Fuchs is on the phone. And again, I invite all attendees who wish to testify, but maybe having technical issues to enter their comments in the chat. I can try to unmute Mr. Fuchs.
Okay, please.
Let's do that.
Enter your attendee ID number, followed by pound.
You hear him? You hear Mr. Hughes?
Mr. Fuchs?
I hear you.
Go ahead. Yes.
Hear me now? Hello? Hello, do you
Go ahead.
Okay. Again, the project there is totally unnecessary. Main reason that the developer wants to build here because there's
You're
nothing
very
to
low.
We still can't hear you.
Hello? Hello? Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, there's no need for this entire project. Okay, there's enough housing for park area.
Your voice is cutting in and out.
Can you hear?
If there are people that called in that are not able to convey on the chat, are we able to pick up lines individually to ask people to see if they want to speak on this item so that we don't miss any speakers?
But do they need to be unmuted? I don't know. I mean, is everyone on mute?
Right, but if we individually go to each line to ask them one by one if they wanted to speak on this item so that we don't miss a speaker that's not able to talk in the chat function.
Right. I mean, there is a note in the chat that says neighbors would like to speak. Can they be called on their home phones? But we don't know.
Right.
Okay, someone is calling and speaking. Can you identify yourself?
Turn left on Cedar Bridge Avenue.
Hello? Yes. Yes, would you like to speak?
Hello?
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
I would love to speak if I'm allowed to.
Please state your name and you can speak.
My name is Esther Zeidenfeld. Are you speaking to me? Because I hear like an echo.
Yes, are you on more than one device?
I would absolutely love to speak if I can.
Please continue.
My name is Esther Zeidenfeld, and I live on 59th Street. And this project would totally would be a disaster for us. We would totally lose our sunlight and our quality of life. Our whole block is 2 or 3 family houses, and there is absolutely no reason why this man should not get permission to build exactly the same thing. We have no shortage of housing. There's Maple Leaf right across the street that's empty for about 1.5 years, and nobody has bought it. There's another whole project that came up on 50th Street by 19th Avenue, and there is plenty of places to go to. And the issue with the parking, he just said it, the neighbors were complaining about the parking, but you know, whoever doesn't live here doesn't understand. There is absolutely nowhere to go. My husband can circle around and around and around for half an hour and sit around and wait for somebody to pull out. He has to go a few blocks away to get parking. And if another building like that will come up on 60th Street, it will be absolutely disastrous. And let's not kid ourselves. The people who are presenting this project have all the money, all the power and the lawyers. We're just little people that are going to really be affected. I have children, I have grandchildren. They're not going to get they're not going to be able to afford to get into those buildings around the corner. You can ask them how much they're planning to rent them for. It's ridiculous. The prices they're asking for, one bedroom, $2,100. Those few fortunate people who might be able to get the affordable housing, I don't know when it'll actually be affordable by the time we finish with this whole project. In short, this whole thing is a total disaster. If you would come to the block, I think Eric Adams or his deputy should come to the block, come to the neighborhood, and look before they agree to allow them to build. Look at these people's backyards. Look how they're going to be affected. There's absolutely no reason why we have to change the whole face of the neighborhood. Why? There's no reason for this. There's a reason for zoning. The zoning was made that we should not be able to have builders and people with a lot of money and power just do whatever they want. I really respectfully request that it should be absolutely totally denied. If this man wants to build 2-3 family houses and save the face of the neighborhood, we'd be very happy to have him do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So is there someone else who would like to speak?
It looks like there are 2 individuals who may be calling in shortly.
Am I allowed to speak now? Hello?
Yes, what is your name?
My name is Miriam Schwinder.
Yes, you may proceed.
I live on the block as well. I'm a homeowner, and we are very, very opposed to it, mostly because of its size, the possibility of having some parking space, even though they're not enough, but we would have some parking spaces allowed by these buildings. The question is how many people are going to bother to go down there? And if it's only for people who actually live in the building and just have to go out one more time that day, they're going to park in the streets and deny us our spaces, which are very, very rare and very difficult to come by. And then when the people in these 92 units that they're talking about have guests coming over, where are they parking their cars? And the traffic of the pickups of children from school buses, these are families with multiple children. The infrastructure of this community cannot allow for such an influx of so many units and to be built here. In addition to that, the height of the buildings is extremely out of proportion to the neighborhood. Besides blocking our light and air quality, it is just a monstrous, big project that we don't want in our backyards. And we would respectfully ask that you do not allow them to build this. And the right approach would be to view the neighborhoods before allowing these and to see that we are making sense. The drainage of the water when it rains does not go down. There's so much garbage around. It cannot be handled by what we have here as services from the city. And getting additional services, even with the new census that's being taken right now, is at least 3, 4, 5 years down the road. It is just not going to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there someone else waiting to speak? Ina, I know you mentioned someone else, like another person.
Yes, there are 2 individuals who may be calling in shortly. I think we should maybe give them a few minutes to try to call in.
I want to thank the folks from Vinegar Hill
Hello?
for patiently waiting.
Can I speak?
Yes, if you could just state your name, please.
Abe Fuchs.
Okay, Mr. Fuchs, if you can proceed.
Okay, I live on 59th Street. I've been here for 45 years. The the issue with no parking is an issue, but the major issue is that there is no need for this project altogether. I mean, there is 150 units across the street, like somebody mentioned before, in Maple Lanes that's sitting empty. There are hundreds of people leaving the neighborhood. There's no reason to be building 92 units in the backyard of people that have two-story houses. 2 blocks away, 1 block away is totally commercial. 61st, 62nd, 63rd, 64th Street is all commercial, all with automotive, all with other commercial manufacturing. And that's all the same zoning. So this is part of that zoning. The fact that Maple Lane's got a waiver and changed the zoning was because I would assume it's a separate entity. There's nobody, it's an entire block. There's nobody behind them. It's against the law, the railroad over there, 16th Avenue, the railroad, and 61st Street. Us is behind 59th Street. It's all private 1- and 2-story houses, and that's it. There's no reason for this project. The only reason for this project is for the developer to make a lot of money off the backs of people that are living on 59th Street. There's no such thing as affordable housing. The numbers that he threw out are totally ridiculous. I have a couple apartments that I rent over here. I'm not getting anywhere near those numbers that he's talking about. So those numbers are way out of line. Okay, nobody's getting $2,100 for a 1-bedroom apartment in Borough Park here. I'm 59, and nobody wants a 1-bedroom. And the 2 bedrooms and the 3 bedrooms, the prices that he's talking about are totally not Borough Park prices. He's talking about prices in Manhattan maybe. So basically, it's a money situation for developer, Mr. Nutzensweig. That's what he wants to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuchs. Is there someone else who would like to speak?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, hello?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
I would like, am I on? Leigh Adler?
Yes, please proceed.
I would like to say that I live directly behind this house, and right now I have sunlight and privacy, and because there's a 1-story, the car mechanic, I was able to plant my vegetables because I have sunlight. If they're going to put up a 7-story building behind me, a 6-story or 7-story building, 20 feet away from my house, I won't have any sunlight, and I live on the dark side of the street, and and I get my sunlight just from the back, from the 60th Street. If they're going to put a 7-story building right behind my house, I'm not going to have any sunlight at all. And like Mr. Fuchs said, who needs them? Who needs it? This is such a congested area. Why do we need another 90 apartments here? Nobody wants it, and the car parking here is terrible. And my husband just passed away from this COVID-19. I think that, you know, it's congested enough. What is this all for? It's just to make this developer rich, and we are very, very against it. And there's a lot of people who wanted to get on, but they couldn't because, you know, not everybody has. I couldn't get on because I couldn't download the WebEx, and neither could my sister, who lives across the street, get on. And many people just couldn't get on because they, you know, they don't have access, and there was a wrong number in the first place. Anyway, we are all very upset about it, and I really hope that this whole project is just trashed. We really don't want it. Thank you very much.
The voice is not being heard.
What?
You want me to go outside and stand outside? 1 minute, hold on.
Everybody has 3 minutes to say it. I think he has it on tape, so we're just having our feelings. He has it on tape. They claim that the city needs power, so they'll put it aside in the one bedrooms and the HUD people. You know, when they say one bedroom apartment, now one word is said about square footage. You don't know how tiny that is. Not one. And these are the affordable, $1,500. It's affordable, regular tenants. You know, if you don't get the area, you don't get into the affordable, you have to pay $2,100 for one bedroom.
Hello,
Okay, here.
would you like to speak?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know if you heard, I just want to add to what I said before, that if you would be building homes, then we wouldn't, we wouldn't have a right to object, because that's what everybody else is building. But the 6 family houses, right 20 feet away from our houses, it's just, the property is built out to the lot line, and that's what he intends to keep it. To have a monster right in my backyard, I'm totally, very, very upset. I feel it will totally diminish the quality of our lives and take away our privacy, our sunshine, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone else who would like to speak before we close this item?
Calendar item number 1 is closed. Calendar item number 2, 150178ZMK, 180178ZRK.
This application submitted by Michael Spinyard pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the New York City Charter for a zoning map amendment to change from M1-2 to R6A C2-4, a property on the northeast corner of Front and Gold Streets, and a zoning text amendment to designate the site as a MIH area. Such actions would facilitate the development of a 4-story mixed-use building with 9 dwelling units and a 5,000 square foot commercial ground floor in Brooklyn Community District 2. The development would not be required to provide affordable housing pursuant to MIH. Community Board 2 voted to disapprove this application on March 11th, 2020. Just a reminder for viewers, if you wish to testify, you must use the web chat function to indicate your intent to speak. After the presentation and question and answer portion, we will call on speakers in order of chat requests. Would Eric Palatnik, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present the application. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here, and I know that there are people on the line that want to speak and have their voices heard. So I'll make my presentation very quick because it's a very straightforward application. And I'll preface everything by saying that we have tried for the past few years to reach out to as many people as we can in the community and sit with them and try and create a development that was something that they would be happy with. We thought we were there before we got certified. We had sat with folks in the area beforehand, and we were working in the right direction. Since certification, it hasn't worked out that way, but we remain committed. And in part of my presentation, I'll explain the changes that we are willing to make to try to accommodate their concerns best we can, just as in my last application. I am not insensitive to the fact that what we're doing and what I do when I do a rezoning application is change a neighborhood from what it's been in the past. I will say this unabashedly. I don't think all change is bad. I think some of it is necessary. And this application is probably the best example. And thank you for David for going right to the presentation while I was talking. That's my prompt. This is the site that we are talking about. My name is Eric Palatnik. I am representing the developer, and he should be on the phone. His name is Joe Passatoro, and Mr. Spinard is the owner, and they have owned this site that is in a manufacturing zoning district, an M12 district. And we are here tonight to ask your permission to allow us to rezone it to an R6A C24 district, to allow for the creation of a 4-story building that, much like the last discussion we had, we are willing to deed restrict to that height at 4 stories with no commercial. And we're willing to eliminate the proposed commercial overlay. So what you have on the site right now, the site is about 5,000 square feet. You can see it clearly laid out at the corner of Gold and Front Street. Front Street is the dividing line. It's like the Wild West. On the lower part of the page, you can see Front Street looks like a beautiful family-oriented New York City neighborhood. On the north side of Front Street, it looks like an industrial. I can't even use the right word for it. There's the dog. I can't even use the right word for it. Let me close the window. This Bernard family has operated the site for many years as a trucking depot. They have been using the site where they start their construction material, the trucks, every day. They have a construction company. You can see in the aerial, the trucks that are there are all dump trucks. They're diesel trucks. They're all kinds of heavy equipment. They're loud. They start early in the morning. They operate usually 5 days a week. They used to be 6. The family that owns the property is getting on in their years. They're looking to figure out what to do with the property. They can keep it operating as a family business, or they could change the use. It's in a manufacturing area. The world of alternative uses in a manufacturing zone are limited to uses that aren't necessarily neighborhood friendly. So we're asking permission, with trying to put as much input as we can to the neighbors around us and their concerns, to allow us to build a building that is almost identical in nature to the building that is behind this site. You can see the side of it, the brick building, a residential building. It'll be 4 stories. If it's approved, it will have 9 units. It will have 12,000 square feet of residential, and 5,000 square feet was proposed to be commercial. We're happy to convert that commercial to residential and make the whole thing a 16,000 square foot residential building. With that having been said, I'll click to the next page. David, if you could please go to the next page. This page gives you an outline of exactly what I was just talking about. The left-hand side gives you what it is right now. It's an M12. We're asking to rezone to an R6B with a C24 overlay. The right-hand side shows you what could be built there. Off in the sense that it says 10, 12 units. I believe there would be 9. If you go to the next page, please. Gives you the site. To the next page. I think we all know where the property is. And to the next page. To the next page. We're all familiar with all this, so I'm not going to stay on this. David, next. This is helpful. Freeze right there, please. Up, go back, please. Thanks, David. Thank you for scrolling for me. So this gives you an idea of what's going on. Remember what I told you before, Front Street was the dividing line. I think you could start to see what we're sandwiched between. I don't think it's beyond debate that from a planning perspective, it makes sense to have a residential on this site. The bottom of the screen is a 7-story residential building. Then there's our site, and there's residential next to it, and there's residential next to that. Gold Street has a residential character. Across the street from us, I'm going to show you where it says parking lot. That's a residential district. I'm going to show you the map that shows you that. We're really an anomaly here. We're a leftover from a period of time when Dumbo was and Vinegar Hill was a manufacturing and active commercial area. That's why the family that's here is in front of you. They didn't speculate. So if you go to the next page, I can show you more. I'll keep going, David, to the next. Now we get down on the ground. You can start to go back one, please, David. The top left corner gives you the site in all of its glory. I said to you before that we were similar to the building to the left of us on Gold Street. You could see that building there. That design queue. going to show you a rendering later. Yeah, we're going to be slightly taller than that building for sure. We're definitely going to be taller. I think our total height is 51 feet. That building next to us had the eyeball is probably about 40 feet. So we will be taller, but we're trying to mimic the character of that old school brick design. And again, the family here is a local family, and they're trying to commit to that. The top right gives you the site and all of its beauty. It's a storage yard. It's guarded. It's fenced up like a storage yard with a steel fence. It's not very inviting. Ironically, if you look at the bottom of the screen in view 2, you can see the bike rack. It's a juxtaposition of uses that I don't think really go so well. I mean, I got a guy on my site that's driving diesel trucks out of his site that are gigantic, and I'll show you a picture of him in a second. And he's allowed to do that, and it's the only thing he can do with his property. And he's backing into a bicycle rack that we're all saying right now should be what's going on. So it's a huge juxtaposition of uses next to each other. If you go to the next page, top left shows you the dump truck I was talking about. Top right shows you the bike rack I was talking about. I think it's a bike rack. It appears to be. I've never noticed it before. But you start to see what I'm talking about. That top right picture on the left side of the picture is residential. On the right side is us. The lower left picture juxtaposes that and shows you that on the right side is residential and on the left side is us. You go to the next slide, please, David. This just gives everybody more of a view of what's going on in the neighborhood and what things look like. If you go to the next page, please, David. Go to the next page, please, David. I think everybody knows what the community looks like. I think we can get through the pictures now. Keep going. All right, go to the next one. Freeze right here. Go back. So this is the whole thing. What we're asking you to do, it's so minimal from a zoning map perspective that it's almost hard to see what we're doing. If you look on the left side of the page, dead center, you'll see you'll see at the intersection of Front and Gold, there are 4 corners. 3 of them are zoned residentially. The top left is an R6B. The bottom 2 corners are an R6A. Our corner is an M1. It doesn't fit. Now, I know that people are upset by the potential for what can be done here, and we're trying to restrict that. But if you look at this, it's a neighborhood, and it's missing a piece. And the uses that can go in an M zone as of right, I can't even come up with anything worse than what my client is using it for right now, which is the starting up of diesel trucks and trucks. So go to the next page, please. Next page, please. Next page, please. Next page. Go to next. Next. This is all just, now you start to get to the plans. This image gives you an idea for what, go back, please. Please there for one moment. This was the idea when we were having commercial at the ground floor. We are happy to agree to eliminate the commercial proposal. We've heard throughout the application process from the neighbors. We've met with them. They told us over and over that they weren't really thrilled with the idea of commercial to begin with and to restrict it. We got to the community board. People told us clearly they didn't want any commercial at all. We're happy to get rid of the commercial. We're not here to change the neighborhood. We weren't trying to create nightclubs. We're not trying to create restaurants. We're not trying to create sidewalk cafes. We're not trying to create any of that. We're trying to create housing. We're trying to build apartments. That's all we're trying to do. The next page, please. It just gives you the zoning calculations, and it just summarizes everything I've been telling you before, which is basically that the building is about 16,000 square feet. It can accommodate approximately 9 units, maybe up to 10. It'll be 4 stories. It'll be 51 feet tall. It will not have any parking. There's no parking proposed. If you go to the next page, please. This gives you existing conditions to the next page. This gives you an idea of what the building will look like and how it's been laid out and how it can lay out on the site. It could either front on Front Street or Gold Street. In this scenario, the architect has drawn it so it fronts on Front Street. The building will be required to have a rear yard, and that's what they are showing there. If you go to the next page. Oh, by the way, if you go back to the one page, go back to the left page. This was an idea that we came up with to provide parking, so it can have parking. So this was one option. The other option is to have no parking at all. But you can see there on the left side of this plot plan, it says open area with non-required open accessory parking spaces. That was an attempt by us, at least, for this hearing, to at least come back with something when it came to parking, as that was discussed. But it doesn't require any parking. To the next one, slide, please. This just gives you an idea of how it could lay out and what the building could look like. Just keep clicking through the plans here. It's basically very straightforward. There's not much complication to the plans. It's a 4-story building. And there you go with what it's going to look like in plan form. And click to the next one. And I think we are pretty much at the end of our presentation. I don't know if there's much more. David, if you can click to the end. There are no, I think that's the last slide. There are no affordable units in it. The building does not trigger any affordability requirements. It comes in just under the floor area as proposed, as designed right now. It could be built bigger as it's being shown right now. It's not being built out to its full R6A proposal. We are between an R6A and an R6B because the numbers to get to where we're trying to be and where we need to be, that's why we're asking for the R6A. We'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have. By the way, this rendering that you're seeing here shows you what the building would look like if it did not have any of the voluntary parking. So I showed you 2 different scenarios because parking came up. This can be built under the proposed zoning with no parking and creates more of a contextual street wall. But we're open to talk about all of that if it gets to that. Thank you for your time. I'm complete with my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Palatnik, again for your presentation. So we have a few questions for you. So community representatives have expressed that residential only development based on the expansion of the adjacent R6B district would be welcome. However, achieving such outcome would not be possible within the scope of this application, as such district provides less community facility floor area than the existing zoning district. So what consideration has been given to withdrawing this application and resubmitting a R6B without the commercial overlay district?
Well, if we withdrew the application due to a glitch in the zoning, and not a glitch, but the way the zoning is written, if we switch to an R6B right now, we would have to withdraw the application. And if we withdrew the application, that would set the entire project back years. It would most likely make it a non-reality for this owner, most likely, because this owner is well into their later years at this point and would not necessarily have the time. So can this be thrown out and an R6B proposal be brought in front of everybody? Yes, without commercial. And that's and we would be inclined to we'd have no choice but to go with it if that's what people wanted to see. But we believe that what we're proposing at the R6A can create the housing that everybody wants to see. It gives the potential maybe for some affordable housing to be built, although none is being proposed here. And it is what has been filed already, and it can be accommodated to meet the demands of the community through a restrictive declaration that we can create that would give everybody the assurances they need that we would meet the design requirements that they want. So that's why we're asking to continue onward in the direction we're headed in.
Thank you. So given the modest scale of the intended development, parking would not be required. However, due to the extent of nearby development in Dumbo, on-street parking is likely to become more challenging. What consideration is being given to providing parking, and if so, might such parking accommodate car share vehicles as a means to provide community residents with affordable access to a car?
Yes, and yes, that's what that last photo showed. The last, not the photo, but the alternative scheme. But that's if the building. Yes, we can accommodate it. We can provide it, and if that's what people wanted to see, we would be happy to agree to it.
So the next question deals again with the renewable and sustainable energy. So if you can talk about any consideration that has been given to work with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA, NIFOR, or the incorporation of Blue Roofs, passive house design, or DEP rain gardens?
So in this application, the applicant that I am representing, one of the partners in it is named Joe Patrick. Joe happens to be the head of the state engine. I forget the exact title of it, but it's the engineering organization at the state level. It's a statewide organization. So he is extremely familiar with development, construction, and he is committed to doing as many measures as he can include. As we discussed in the last hearing, and it's been discussed in earlier discussions, that would include DEP rain gardens, white roofs, fire retention swales. And Joe is actually a little more advanced than most other people in his engineering skills. So he's got water saving design systems that he would like to put in place within the building, as well as high efficient energy heating and cooling systems, which are all part of what he does every day. So he's anxious to implement that in this building if the building should get built.
Thank you. And the last question deals with the quality jobs, good quality jobs. So if you can just take us through the steps that will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority women in business and enterprises.
Well, they will be making efforts. As I said before, they're contractors and they are builders. So when they work on job sites, they usually get bid out. They don't build their own buildings, but they build for other people. So they're very familiar with the bidding process, and they're very familiar with minority and women-owned businesses and the various efforts to encourage the retention of those services. So they will bid out in that direction. They will try to engage local labor whenever they can. They are local guys, and they're only guys. I don't mean to be pejoratively about that. It happens to be two men that are the contractors, but they will reach out locally amongst their resources, the people that they've been working with the past 40 years in the neighborhood, to try to encourage the retention of local labor. And as I said earlier, especially with respect to the Farragut housing, that there is in fact a demand in New York City by the youth that are in trades, that are in trade schools, that would very much like to apprentice on job sites. And we do and will be making efforts to engage local organizations to reach out to and find youths, because I find, and my clients have found that the younger the person is, generally the more enthusiasm they have, especially when they're in these programs. So we're happy to have them on the job site.
Thank you. So that concludes our questions. So now we're going to turn it over to Ina to see if there are any speakers in the chat.
We do have people who are trying to call in. I don't know if they'll be successful because they may not have microphones on their computers. So I would give it maybe a few more minutes to see if we get anybody who wishes to testify and is able to do so.
Is it possible to put the phone number in there again? Because that was...
I have, yes, but I'll do it again.
Okay. If someone would like to just dial in from their phone.
The president of Vinegar Hill Association, I had texted David her phone number for you to identify it.
Yes, she texted, so she messaged me privately, noting that she is having trouble calling in because she doesn't have a microphone on her computer.
Right, but she was going to use her phone.
Yes.
So I don't know if that number is up there, but David, I had sent the phone number to David.
Yes. So let me give that a try.
That number is unmuted.
Hello.
Yes, hello. If you can just identify yourself first, and then you can proceed to speak.
My name is Aldona Veitunis, and I'm the president of the Vinegar Hill Neighborhood Association. I'm specifically here to oppose this rezoning of 265 Front Street, owned by the Spinard family. Vinegar Hill is a small neighborhood with a rich and interesting history and a diverse mix of building types and uses. Some of these buildings in Vinegar Hill, 6 in total, are over 5 stories, but These buildings have been in existence prior to 1961 and prior to the 1998 rezoning of Vinegar Hill, which Community Board 2, City Planning, and Vinegar Hill were a part of. This meeting set a maximum level on the intensity of development, thereby limiting congestion in living conditions and pedestrian and vehicular traffic to each area. Such regulations place certain limitations on the shape and location of buildings to protect light and in residential area privacy and open space, and brought about accurate details that describes the character of the residential portions of Vinegar Hill and reviews how the current map is drawn with individual blocks encompassing multiple zoning districts. This indicates that the city has carefully considered the neighborhood scale and congruent streetscapes. As the matter has already been decided correctly, it should be allowed to remain. An R6A building at 265 Front Street will tower over the buildings surrounding it, likely at more than twice the height of the existing historic brownstones, and fundamentally undermine the character that an R6B district was intended to preserve. These newly revised renderings for 265 Front Street are shown to make you believe that this proposed development, which sits in the midst of two landmark streets with 3 to 4 story row houses built in the 19th century, would be to scale. It is not. One need look no further than 1 block west of Bitt Street and the M1-4 and R7A mostly zoned neighborhood of Dumbo to experience the dramatically different urban fabric that will result from changing the zoning as proposed. Now with 85 J Street being built and the commercial corridor that will be open with their commercial properties, it is even more important not to allow this rezoning to occur. We truly believe in limiting the height of the neighborhood and that any commercial lots wanting to rezone into residential should be done R6B and nothing higher in order to keep with the average height of the buildings in the neighborhood. Grandfathered buildings in Vinegar Hill are the exception and not a precedent. We do invite residential development to underutilized or abandoned sections of the neighborhood as long as it fits with the consensual nature of what makes Vinegar Hill as unique and such a great community. To increase the zoning to an R6A will irreparably destroy this neighborhood and would set a precedent for future developers to ask for the same, if not higher, zoning. May I remind you that 251 Front Street, which is across the street, has been sold, and if this upzoning for 265 Front Street were to be approved, I can only imagine what that developer would want to do to that site. We don't believe that the neighborhood needs additional commercial property, and I'm glad to hear Mr. Palatnitz say that the commercial is off the table, because with the large builds on Navy Street with Wegmans and other new retail there, we are very, very much concerned that most of this new commercial real estate is still sitting empty. Vinegar Hill is a close-knit community, and we urge the Brooklyn Borough President's office to respect our wishes as it considers any zoning changes, variances, special use permits, amendments to ordinances, and contract or special use zoning. Please join us in opposing the zoning change of R6A for 265 Front Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi, if you could just state your name and then you can proceed to speak.
Great. Aldona said it best. This is Richard Church from 75 Gold Street. I'm immediately adjacent to the 265 Front Street lot. And just wanted to speak for, I'll keep it quick. I know we're overextended on this call already, but I'm not here to voice my opposition to the residential zoning of this or the many other lots in our neighborhood, but am opposed to doing so as R6A. The shortest way to sum this up is that the bulk and density of R6A is incongruent with the homes on this block and throughout the historic neighborhood. My home is 34 feet high, as are most of the other townhouses in the neighborhood. R6A, as you know, can tower above 80 feet. Apart from the out of context nature of the zoning, there's a real concern of setting a dangerous precedent that many of the other low-lying lots and buildings surrounding us will follow suit. I know officially that allowing rezoning for one lot does not technically set a precedent, but in truth, it absolutely will. This lot becomes R6A, the next becomes R7A, and so forth. Developers look at Dumbo, a former commercial district, as inspiration for this neighborhood. When the community was approached by Eric and the Spinners 3 years ago, as they embarked on this application, we voiced our support of residential zoning on 265 Front Street, but only as R6B, which, by the way, still allows for 50 plus feet, if not more. Instead of listening to us and working with us, they ignored the concerns of the community and proceeded with something that would give them the most bang for their buck, not what is contextual or appropriate for the small neighborhood. As for the restrictive declaration, that's really a huge leap of faith and total gamble where, in the end, I feel like the House will win. They could achieve what they are proposing with R6B. This project is in all reality a flip. The Spinners are truck drivers and haulers, and God love them, but they're not developers, landlords, and not locals or participants in neighborhood affairs. When the new developer comes in, hidden behind holding company after holding company, that declaration will be history. We will end up with a civil suit between the neighborhood association and the developer. And in the end, we're a small, grossly underfunded neighborhood association battling a big developer trying to take over blocks of the neighborhood. Lastly, is typically the presentation is really skewed with streets that look like Northern Boulevard in Queens, buildings that look like East Williamsburg Industrial Park, when in reality, we're a small tree-lined cobblestone neighborhood. And really just even presenting stuff like that just underscores their intentions. In summary, I ask you stand with our community and CB2 and help us seek both preservation of our neighborhood, but also responsible housing and development. It's these unique character-driven neighborhoods that make Brooklyn what it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Is there anyone else who would like to?
So what the borough president can do is they can approve with condition. And they can say, we approve it, but our condition is it should be an R6B instead.
Okay, who is? Hello. If you could just state your name and repeat, I'm not sure who was speaking.
Is it not Nina's kids? Because I can see her mic's not.
Would someone else? Is someone else speaking?
I know, I feel so bad because my turn moderating.
Also, he's like a zoning expert. This guy's
like who's the noise. You can like
I know
whose background it is.
Can we state the names, Ina, that you're coming up with? Because maybe the person doesn't realize you're unmuting them.
Adam Hines, would you like to speak?
I just want to confirm my feelings with regard to the zoning restrictions with Mr. Bartow. I'm sorry, I have some background noise that's probably going to bother you, so I won't continue. Just I'm following up with it.
Thank you. Is there someone else waiting to speak?
There's nobody in the chat who has indicated intent to speak.
So those other names that popped up, are they wanting to speak? Because we see the names flash.
Austin, is it Corey? Corey?
Austin is with our office. He's just
okay.
listening.
Okay. All right, that might be it. Okay. So hearing none, the hearing on these items is now closed. Thank you for participating in this remote public hearing. Borough President Adams will review the applications heard today and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission for further consideration. Borough President Adams would like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on these items, which will be announced at a later date. Borough President Adams would also like to remind viewers that comments can be submitted by email to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. This hearing is now adjourned. Again,
Thank you, everybody. 4th of July to everybody.
Yes.
Enjoy the break.
Yes, and thank you, Ina, Richard, and David Perez for your technical assistance tonight.
Thank you, Tanya, for chairing the hearing.
Sure. Thank you. Everyone have a good night.